category, and this is the winner, starting with assigned subject. I have to be able to see as well. Hang on just one second. I can't see, but I brought some help. Okay. All right. The best assigned subject is entitled Lydia by Ellen Davis. Best abstract, Amethyst Geode by June Anderson. Best architecture, entitled Alaskan Dystopia, by Tom Quinn. Sorry, Tom. Best fauna, entitled Majestic, by Tom Quinn. Best flora, entitled Blue Oak in Early Spring, by Eric Ingalls. Best natural landscape is Late Spring Storm in Loyalton, by Eric Ingalls. Best night photography, entitled Rider Off Dancing, by Douglas Hooper. Best people, entitled Snake Girl, by Robert Arnold. Best photojournalism, Surfer aids baby dolphin while waiting for Marine Rescue Team, by Anne Westling. Best travel, entitled Norway Sunset, by Kathy Triolo. Best creative fantasy, anything goes, entitled Amsterdam, by Kathy Triolo. Best black and white, Tower of Shrooms, by Fred Classens. Best color, King Vultures in Conversation, by Anne Westland. And the last category, best phone, 32nd NC, by Ellen Davis. So a round of applause for our winner. All right, next up is our critique, and I'm going to pass the mic to Kathy Triolo.
Yeah. Okay. They're all set.
Thank you, Rachel.
All right. Assigned subject. Is this all? Okay.
Well, hold on.
Test.
Wait a minute.
All right, I'm just testing. It's,
Okay.
no, it's on.
Test.
Thank you. I love our tech team.
Okay, this is the assigned subject, and the assigned subject is panoramic. This first image is titled Myanmar Panorama.
Look, can you hear me?
Hello, all right, here we go. So, just always like to remind people that these are just our opinions. These are not set in stone. And we're just, it's just for constructive criticism. All right, and so even without the title, we've got a really good sense of place in the region of the world. I'm not sure if this is a panorama, but maybe, yeah, anyway, I'm just kidding. I like this composition. The horizon line is right in the middle, but the bookended diagonals really create a connection between the earth and the skies at the top and the bottom of the image. I like that there are little temples that jut out from the earth that reach up to the sky, and that kind of helps emphasize that. I think that the exposure is good. There's some pretty good detail throughout the image. In the bottom left-hand corner, there is a good white, and it's kind of pixelated, and there's just no information there. But that's an easy fix with a clone or a heel brush. And all right, and nice panorama. Thank you. And the makers and Sylvester. Next is Cloud Rainbow.
I love it when the audience says, wow, it does my job before me. Wanted the use of panoramic technology, whether it was spliced or in camera, I'm not sure, but a beautiful scene that really can only be fully captured and appreciated as a pano, I think. Great color, obviously, throughout. Good job on what could be a pretty tricky exposure with that sky. I wasn't sure at first about that fence and the road. But the more I look at it, it didn't really detract from the overall scene. So very pretty, very nice, and good job, thanks.
And the photographer is Bob Free. This next image, spring in the foothills.
So I really like the nice lush green. It's like you can almost smell the spring and the freshness. The light is nice and soft and it helps make the colors pop. We have an oak tree about a third away into the frame, and that really kind of serves as a kind of a bit of a focal point. And then there's the repeated shapes of the oak tree throughout the image. But I like that there's some areas with negative space, and that kind of breaks that up. And you get some cows that really kind of help give a sense of place. I might suggest cropping a little bit off the bottom, just kind of underneath that darker green patch, just a shade. It just doesn't feel that it adds as much to the image. But I think this is a successful image.
And the photographer is Daniel Chaplin. This next image is Train Old Town Sacramento.
This panoramic captures the scale and power of this locomotive. I think the photograph shows great technical skill, technical quality. The angle of composition is very nice. The exposure and clarity are really precise. When I zoomed in on this and moved around on the engine, to me it feels just a bit tight at the top with the smokestack there, maybe. My eye keeps being drawn to that bridge sticking up on the left, the Sacramento bridge back there. And also a little bit to the lamppost on the right, but not nearly so much as the bridge on the left. I don't think you would lose much here in terms of being a picture of the train by just propping on the left, completely taking out that bridge. You'd still have the Santa Fe written on the second car there. Or cloning out the top of the bridge potentially, which would be easy to do with that against that sky. But yeah, a nice image.
And the photographer is Jeff Alstetter. This next image, Grandview Park East View.
When I first looked at this image, I wasn't entirely sure where it was. It's like, Texas, Europe, and then it's like, oh, there's the Sutro Tower. And I like that it's a very different perspective of San Francisco. It's not one that I've seen before, so I can appreciate seeing a good view of the city. I like that the horizon line is just kind of this long, has these waves and these curves. And that helps create a connection between the top and the bottom of the image. Those clouds are very nice. There's a lot of detail and there's definition, but it's not overly done. I like that the hill is about a third of the way into the frame, and that there's some lines that kind of like some leading lines that go around the hill and kind of back into whatever's after it. Very cool. And the photographer is Mike Shea. This next image, early morning light.
Obviously, a very, very pretty, I assume, high Sierra scene. I just love that reflective light. That really, to me, makes the photo on the lake there. It's a tough exposure when you're going for some shadowed areas as well as the reflective light. To me, the tough exposure led to the distant bridge, particularly on my computer at home, looking at it closely. Being a bit blown out, it's kind of tough to do a shot like this without getting a little bit of that. And also, when you zoom in, the image actually appears a bit soft in clarity and sharpness throughout the image, interestingly. But all in all, despite those minor complaints, really lovely mountain lake image.
And the photographer is Rick Eshelman. This next image, North Coast Morning fog. I think maybe it's morning. Oh, maybe morning fog.
So I think this also has a very peaceful feeling to it. You can kind of, this is the image, a kind of image that you can kind of hear, and kind of smell, just the soft, you know, crashing of the waves. I like that there are contrasts between the soft and the hard. We have some hard light, but then some of that gets diffused by the fog on the left. You have the hard, you know, sharp. You know, it's a little rough, but it still has, it's nice, soft. There is a bit of a, I see like a little bit of a flow from right to left. There's a little bit of a swooping line that's created by the rocks, and I like that there are three big rocks to kind of, you know, give some like nice repeated patterns. In the bottom left-hand side, in the very corner, there is a blank white area. And that is really quite easy to fix with the cloning tool. I mean, it's very, very tiny, but so it's easy to fix up.
And the photographer is Larry Lempman. Last in the panoramic subject category, oak tree.
It's a really captivating image. And I think the photographer used some creativity in the use of the editing tools, seems to me. It actually looks like they intentionally softened, maybe with the clarity slider down, I'm not sure. But that softening enhanced the feeling of a foggy background. There's a little bit of fog in those hills, but with that softening, I think it enhanced the moody, misty, foggy kind of feel. Contrasted with that vivid black oak tree, it really works for me. I just really like that.
And the photographer is Robert Arnold, and that ends assigned subject of panoramic. Now we are in the abstract category. This first image is agave.
What I noticed first are the repeated shapes and forms of the leaves. And then I noticed that there's a really nice color contrast. You know, the main leaf that is blue, it's this warm green, yellow color, and then the contrast with the cool kind of blue, sagey green of the onion leaves. There's also just a nice contrast between the hard spines and some of the softer shapes of those long lines. I'm a big fan of the square crop, and I think that this works. You get the leaf about a third of the way in and then you move 2 thirds, so that does have a nice balance. I would also be curious to see what it would look like as a portrait orientation crop, so you get a little more length to kind of emphasize those long lines. So fun one to play with.
And the maker is Jim Anderson. This next image is Palm Bark Night.
When I pulled this up on my computer, it's kind of a jarring image when you first pull it up. Very high contrast against that black background. I assume a flash, either some sort of bright external light, which leads to me to be a bit overly bright, particularly towards the bottom, where that bright white areas are really totally blown out and you can't see much detail. Also leads to that very sort of artificially yellow color on the palm. Just another observation, to me, this image would have fit better in the flora category rather than abstract. But that said, it's an interesting and kind of compelling image when you first pull it up. So thanks for sharing.
And the maker is Jeff Alstatter. This next image is titled Water Spirit.
So what I like about this is it kind of took me a moment to kind of sort out what was going on. And even after I did, I just really explored, just really enjoyed just letting my eye kind of explore this image, all the different, the lines and the contrasts. And I really like how that orange kind of the fish underneath kind of seeps through and up into the surface and kind of creates this hole is up and down and top and bottom. And I really, what I really like about these types of scenes, besides all the interesting visual elements of it, is that it really just highlights, photography just captures just a tiny, tiny slice in time, and that the scene has only existed like once for a fraction of a second.
And the maker is Grace Fairley. This next image, Birdie Bit Black Sand Diamond Beach, Iceland.
There's no debating that this one is certainly abstract. Without the title, I assumed it was ice, or perhaps water, and it may be. The title, having that black sand kind of threw me, but perhaps the black sand is just the name of the beach and not the subject matter of the photo. In any case, I really enjoy this sort of thing, doing quite a few abstracts myself. I found myself moving my eyes around the image and just sort of studying it and really enjoyed it. Really nice abstract.
And the maker is Fred Finney, and that ends the abstract category. This next category is architecture, and this first image is Pont du Gard in France.
So it's hard to get more classical architecture than Roman aqueduct. I mean, it's a beautiful structure. It has those has this repeating shape of all the arches and the supports. And like that, it's actually, it's in, there are threes. It's like a nice number of lines for visually. And I like the ancient stone is just really worn, and it feels like it is part of that it came from the landscape and it is of the landscape. I might suggest cropping a little bit off the bottom, just a little bit off the top, and then that would emphasize the lines of that bridge even more, and I feel without losing much information on either the top or the bottom, and then it just makes it look even longer. Yeah, beautiful image. Thank you.
And the maker is Fred Finney. This next image is Hoover Heritage Center, Arizona.
I found this to be a fun, somewhat dizzying architectural image with a whole lot going on. So many angles coming in from all different directions. At first, looking at it, I thought maybe this would work better in black and white, in part because I like doing black and white and this sort of thing. But looking at it, that soft orange salmon color, I think contrasts really nicely with the blue background sky. The focus is a bit soft, and I wondered maybe if it was from a phone picture or not. I think a bit of sharpening and some noise reduction, there's quite a bit of noise in there as well, could really benefit this otherwise very interesting photo. Thank you.
And the maker is Jean Anderson. This last image in architecture is Stockholm train station bench.
So I like Scandinavian design. I think it's just really appealing because it's so minimal and it says generally the most strong design, which is exactly what we get out of this bench here. So it has a really nice, beautiful curving line that how strong your eye is the image. And I like those really strong, seamless verticals from the bench, and then that's kind of repeated in the columns. And I like that the organic round shapes of the lights can kind of tie into the organic shape of the curving bench. I do like that there is a person in there, but they are reduced more to a form. And so the focus is not on that person, but gives you a sense of scale, the usefulness of art and design. And I might also suggest trying to see how this looks in black and white.
And the maker is Jim Sluder. That ends architecture, and now we enter the barn category with big goals.
Well, this is to me another masterful hummingbird photo, I assume taken by our resident master hummingbird photographer. Most folks like myself are thrilled just to capture a hummingbird in place, but to catch one with a gaping mouth about to snag a small bug is just remarkable. The narrow depth of field and blur of the wings are not an issue at all. In fact, they work well here. It's all about that mouth and all about the rest of that head and those eyes or that eye. Simply a fantastic fauna image. Thanks.
And Tom is absolutely right. He's by our resident hummingbird photographer, Bob Purdy. Next, Mad as a Hornet.
This is in your face. It's kind of terrifying, but I actually really appreciate it. I mean, those eyes are, when I zoom in and checked out more, those eyes are nice and sharp and focused, and you actually can see like the little kind of detail of the eyes. So, and that's where you want the focus to be, is like in those eyes, because it's coming at you, and having that in the center in this case is really effective, because that is your central focus, and it's like, you get the feeling of like, it's coming at you. But I also like the vertical, or I'm sorry, the diagonal lines that create some, you know, break it up, it gives you movement and allows the eye to travel around the image a bit. Very successful and very scary.
And the photographer was Brad Oliver. This next image, red shouldered.
A beautiful hawk in flight. Always tough to capture any birds, but birds of prey, I find particularly on the wing like this. Very pleasing, soft background, and the photo effect back there with nice framing of the hawk against that soft background. The focus on the hawk is actually quite soft, and some of the details are still nice, including a bit of catch light on the eye. A little sharpening perhaps could help on that hawk. Otherwise, a very pleasing hawk image. Thank you.
And the maker is Jerry Thomas. This next image is Protolis Organis Organis.
So I think this is another really excellent perspective and composition for a snake. I'm actually no for this one, so you know, it's also but those beautiful whiplash lines are just wonderful. I like that's really narrow at the top, and then it kind of widens out at the bottom. It gives you a really heavy visual weight on the bottom, and then kind of lightens up at the top, and you know, kind of like the snake is like ready to strike, and really get that feeling from it. So what I might suggest to really kind of help emphasize this, like I would darken down the pavement on the sides of the snake, maybe brighten up the snake just a hair, just to give it a little bit more contrast for the back. And then there's that green, those green bits down at the bottom. I would either like pull those out or get rid of them. And then there's the leaf covering the spot. I might suggest making that spot whole. But I do like the leaves that give it a nice base.
And the photographer, the great photographer is Daniel Chaplin. This next image is Peg Like Bill.
I don't know if the photographer named the bird Bill or what. It's got a very pretty bill. Pretty bird in a nice natural looking setting. Really good contrast with that tremendous blue eye. Can't see it quite up there on the screen, but boy, the computer at home zooming in, it's really cool blue eye against that red coral colored beak and face. This might have been taken in a dim lighting in a natural setting, resulting in a somewhat soft focus and a little bit of noise that didn't really detract too much, gave the overall image of soft feel. The branch behind the bird's head would ideally not be there quite that way, but such is the life of the bird photographer. Thanks for sharing this cool exotic bird with us.
And the photographer is David Nelson. This next image, guess who's coming to dinner?
So I haven't seen the film by the same title, so I don't know if I'm missing any tongue-in-cheek humor. But I think the starkness of the image works really well with the subject matter. That light is hard, that ground is hard, that ground, it's all scrubby. I mean, there's a lot of hardness to it, but it really supports what's the scene here. I like how that it tells a story. There's definitely, I kind of get the feeling there's a little bit of a standoff if they're trying to like creep in, and he's the bald eagles, you know, so he's got his playing. But very well executed, very gruesome scene.
And the photographer is Jimmy Marcio. Next one is Bald Eagle 2.
We've seen quite a few bald eagle shots in the camera club, but not quite this close. Wow, does that face command your attention? It really doesn't get much closer or much crisper than this close-up portrait. I can't help wondering if it was actually taken in the wild. And if so, what lens and focal length was used and just how close that bird was, because it's amazing. That left eye and beak are both in incredible focus and good detail. I'm assuming the photographer made a conscious decision to keep the rest of the image as dark as it is. Personally, I think I would have liked to see those shadows lightened up a bit, particularly on the right side or the eye on the right. It looks brighter on the screen here. Typically, that is the case here. But my computer at home, that eye was even, the shadow was darker than it is up there now. They'll bring up a little more detail in the eye on the right, and a little more detail on the dark feathers on the body. But otherwise, a great portrait of our national bird, looking quite intimidating.
And the maker is Martin Powell, who I think, Martin, you like to go by Desert? All right, Desert Powell. And this next image is iguana on riverbank.
So this is a very handsome iguana here, and I decided I've never seen one in color quite like this, so I appreciate getting to see that. I like that there's that red has a nice color contrast with the green and olive and like in the earth tones and the cool tones. So that really kind of helps draw the eye to this the lizard as the subject. And this is nice and sharp. It looks like it's a good resolution image. And this also feels like an environmental portrait of this handsome guy. And I would actually experiment with some of the cropping. I would probably take some of it off the left. I would maybe contemplate even cropping a little bit closer and making it more of a portrait. But a lot of cool detail, and there's some fun things you can do with this. Thank you.
And the photographer is David Nelson. This next image, are you looking at me?
Really cute, really fun pose of this little bird. With some kind of interesting and nice backlighting on coming through the wings, if you look closely there. At first, I thought it was black and white photograph, but if you look closely, you'll see some interesting green highlights, particularly around the rear end and tail of the bird. And there's some orange, kind of pale salmon color in the background as well, which made me wonder, was that all was intentional, or just the way it turned out, an aberration of the processing. I also wondered if this extremely high level of noise might be intentional. It's not my thing, but I do know, in fact, my son Michael, who you guys know is a good photographer, he's been experimenting with purposefully increasing noise on photographs. It's kind of a thing, I think, among some younger people. And I wonder if maybe it was intentional. In any case, intentional or not, to me, some noise reduction could possibly improve the image. A very cute bird and a very cute pose. Thank you.
And the photographer is Sheila Ryan. This next image is young but determined eagle.
So I think getting in close was a really good choice to kind of gives us a portrait of this young guy. And I like that you can see some of the darker feathers on its head, so you can tell it is still quite young. So I think so even though the light is kind of hard, it's you can the shadows are still brought up nicely, and you can still see the eye quite well, even and it's nice and bright. I like the branch that he's perched on. It's a nice organic shape, and I do wish that there was the background was softened and it had a nice bokeh, so to give it more separation from the background. There is quite a lot going on, especially with all those branches and the lights. I mean, that's something that you can always experiment with post-processing. I think, and you could also try running this through a bit of a denoise program or sharpen it up a little bit too. Thank you.
And the maker is Eleni Prusa. This next image, 3 geese in a row, Mathis Pond.
Well, right off the bat, I just looked up at the screen. I just have to tell you, this is one of those images that look much better on a computer at home. Sometimes they really look too bright on the screen here, and this one is the case. Because I really like this photograph. I found it very pleasing. The nearly straight line from the head of the lowest goose to the head of the highest goose, that angle between the three geese is a really nice element to the composition, as is that wonderful reflection with those soft, kind of autumnish colors. The reflection really makes the photo. Great color palette, particularly in the water. That stick in the back, yeah, obviously that's a real distraction for me. And I think if you have the tools at home to clone, that is easily cloned out because it's not cutting across the goose at all. So I would definitely try to remove that. And I think it'd be better if the goose at the top was facing the left, like the rest of them. But sometimes we have to take what nature gives us.
And the photographer is Red Possums. His last image in the fun category is when the little guy stands up to the man.
So I think this is a really lovely image. It's very graphic and it's very strong. I love that there are three layers, the grading effect. And I like that you can still see some detail in the foreground. And the bold lines of the background, they make a very nice frame and contrast to the organic lines, the plants and the animals. Now the framing feels right for the subject, and it has an almost storybook feel to kind of like there's like some African tale or legend that is going to be told.
And the photographer is Janice Rossman, and that is the following category. This next category is Flora. And the first image is Fallen.
So I find this image very appealing. It's just, I think this one would actually be a nice one to print and hang somewhere. I like the strong contrast is very appealing to me. I like the simplicity of the subject, and I think it was really well executed. So the leaves are chaotic, they're kind of spread all over, they're in different colors, they're in different stages of decay. And then the log underneath that really serves as a kind of an element that kind of unifies them and creates some order in all that chaos. I really like that little slit in the bottom of the log where the leaves kind of tucked in and folded in. And it's just a very nice organic feel to it. There is a tiny blue speck about a third of the way in the upper left. That would be super easy to call it out. Very nice.
And the photographer is Tom Quinn. This
Thank you.
next image.
Thanking the person pointing the blue speck out. I had not noticed.
It took a while to spot it.
She worked hard to find that.
Yeah.
Well, this
Something.
This next image is Close Encounter with the Dahlia.
Really striking macro type pic of this very pretty flower. Great spiraling pattern going on there. I was wondering if that meant the Fibonacci ratio. It kind of looks like it does. All leading to sort of the eye at the center of that dahlia, which is nicely placed in the upper right rather than dead center of the photograph. I also like how the color gradually changes from the left to the right, more from a coral color towards the hotter magenta towards the middle. In part, but due to the soft light coming in from the left. So all that adds up to photographer taking their time on composition and working with the light. And thanks for sharing this close encounter.
And the photographer is our travel at 75 miles an hour, Ingrid Lockhart. And the next image and last in this category is Dogwood Blossoms.
So I think these colors are really beautiful. I love the pink dogwood. Cloudy days are really great for the nice, soft, even lighting and making those colors kind of pop. I think it's a good choice to get in close like this, but I would push it even further. I would fill the frame completely. I'd probably go with a square crop and then place the center of those two dogwoods of each, like one of the 1/3 one, just completely fill that frame up. So the front, the more dominant one, it is out of focus and the back of the sharp, but I still think, that there's a lot of really nice parts of this image, and I like it a lot.
And the photographer is Gary Emanuel. This next category is natural landscape, and the first image is after the rain.
A really cool perspective on this orchard. I particularly like the reflections in the upper 2/3 of the photograph. And I kind of played around with it at home. I actually think it'd be worth considering a crop removing the entire bottom third of this photograph. Because really, I found the top 2/3 really to be most interesting. I know the muddy water is part of the reason for this, but to my eye, there's something feels somewhat off in the color on this photo, especially in the purple blue shadows that are kind of cutting across that muddy water. And having taken pictures of muddy situations, they can do some strange things with the color spectrum. So that's possible, but colors just feel weird to me. Despite all that, a rather cool agricultural landscape, which surprisingly we see very few of here at the club in the landscape category, agricultural. Thank you.
And the photographer is Jonathan Bell. This next image is Aspendell Pond.
So this is a very peaceful and serene, light and scene, and I like the soft lighting, and I like how the colors really pop. And, you know, it was a good choice to put the horizon line right in the middle because it is so symmetrical. So this might be a fun one to flip on its side. It's a real easy way to,
Some of us have done that.
I think if some of us might have done that before, I don't know. So it's totally original. But yeah, that would be fun. Then, you know, you can emphasize different parts of the rocks by making them brighter or darker. And, yeah, fun image. Thank you.
And the photographer is Mike Shea. This next image is Deer Creek.
Well, like the previous one, a very simple, beautiful scene. I think proving once again that you don't need to travel very far from home to capture very compelling landscape photographs when you live in the Atlantic Canada. This one does everything right to me in a demanding technical challenge, not just the long exposure to get the water, but very tricky mixed lighting. Handled, I thought, very well, a little brighter here than it is on the computer, but bringing up those shadows, deep shadows in the foreground and along with some of the rocks without blowing out the sunlit areas. Really a nice job with that. In part because of that, I found the rocks on the upper right a really interesting part of the photograph. They had very sensuous sort of surfaces on those rocks that were captured, I thought, really well with the exposure. And that splash of autumn color, both in the reflection and in the upper right, and another nice visual element. I really like this one.
And the photographer is Desert Powell. This next image is London Canyon.
It's just a really lovely image. You know, it's sharp all the way through, which I think is very appropriate for the scene, because this is something you want to see, like the full effect of this scene. I like, you know, and I think it works really well compositionally that there's, you know, the waterfall placed in the way it does, because it adds, you know, it works as a leading line to draw your eye into the rest of the scene. And I like that like the sky is kind of it's a cool blue, and then there's the warmer color of the green, and then that's contrasted again with the cooler blue shadows of the waterfall and the warmer shadows. So it has that nice contrast aspect as well. I'd be curious to see what the blue shadowed area would look like if it were warmed up, or the warm area with cool blue and vice versa. But I think it's a lovely image. Thank you.
And the photographer is Henry Goodman. This next image, Distant Rain and Canyon de Chelly. Thank you.
Well, another great landscape photo from one of the many outstanding landscape photographers in our club. It's a tough category to compete in. I mean, this scene would be lovely with just a few simple clouds in it, but obviously the wow factor is added by that small little rain downpour out there. And what a difference a little additional element like that can make in a landscape photo, taking it from good to great. Excellent composition, totally correct technically good focus, real technical proficiency showing throughout the entire image. Really nice job.
And the photographer is Eric Engels. This next image, sunset behind Carolina Island.
So I like the colors on this. There's kind of a nice fun gradient, bright down to dark. The little clip out of the sun is kind of interesting. I like how it's peeking out behind the mountains. This is a very hard image to expose for. It's often best to expose for the bright areas and then for the shadows. And there is quite a bit of noise, so it almost feels like it's been pulled up too much, or if that was intentional, I think maybe you should push it even further. But if it wasn't intentional for the noise, then I would suggest running it through a denoise program. We have access to one. This could also work as a square crop, I do. And so adding in people does add kind of a different element to a landscape. I feel this still emphasizes the people and the story between them and the landscape.
And the photographer is Gary Emanuel. This next image, King of the Mountain.
Well, this one obviously could have been submitted in the fauna category, but it also works well as a landscape, kind of seascape. Due in large part to the rocky areas and the attractive plants growing on that major rock in the foreground. That kind of takes it into the landscape category, I think. Nice composition, that angle coming up from the lower right towards the pinnacle of that rock and really up to the star of the show, or king of the top of the mountain there. On my monitor, the rocks and the birds seemed a bit dark. And I thought upping the exposure in those shadowed areas would be worth considering. But boy, on the screen up there, it's not the case. So that's interesting. I love pelicans, and this is a really nice grouping of them and a very pleasing scene.
And the maker is Larry Lefman. This next image is Day at the Lake.
So a day this kind of evokes, summertime memories of being out at the lake, and so it gives you a really good sense of place and what's going on. I think there's there's a good use of a natural frame between all those rocks. That you can really get to see that beautiful blue of the lake. By framing the boats, that really puts more emphasis upon the boats and on the lake and kind of the sense of being on the lake, being on the lake rather than so much as the landscape. I do think this could benefit, like be running through like a sharpening or a denoise program, or pushing the or pushing it further, giving it more noise and maybe like give it some fun effects like a distressed frame or something.
And the photographer is Patricia Leviton. This next image, overlooking glacier fed treasure lakes.
Classic mountain lake view with really beautiful colors, particularly on the lake there. I found it to be an interesting crop, almost panoramic dimensions. And consequently, it feels a bit squeezed at the top to me. But if that was intentional on the part of the photographer, then that was a conscious choice. So be it. Just to my eye, it feels a little squeezed at the top. In general, though, really pretty and well done mountain scene.
And the maker is George Patel. This last image in the natural landscape category is cell cap framed.
So I really appreciate the simplicity of this, and I've not seen this perspective of El Capitan before, so I really appreciate seeing something new and different with that. This is an excellent use of a natural frame. And I like that it has these, the really bold, strong vertical lines, but then in the middle that breaks up a bit, there's some organic lines, and then you can see the shape, of the heart in El Capitan. And that shape is repeated a little bit in the bark on the left. And of course, you know, it's impossible to miss the relationship between the texture of the bark of the wood, against the hard stone of the mountain. And I just love seeing repeated, shapes and patterns like that in, all throughout nature. And, the only suggestion that I might have is to make the crop of the, like the width of the trees of the frame, make them equal widths. But you know, that's just a nitpick, and I think it looks excellent as is. Photographer is John Seaver.
John Seaver. Next category, people. This first image, Gary Newman at Soundcheck.
Very good, okay. We see a lot of concert musician photos at the club, most of which are outstanding. In fact, virtually all of them, to my eye, are professional quality. This one most certainly is a great example of that. And a bit unusual to be done in black and white. Most of the concert ones we see are in color. I happen to love this one in black and white. The converging spotlights, really well done. The smoky haze surrounding Newman, and that illuminated guitar. Look how that guitar just jumps out against the background. All those add to, in my mind, a fantastic image with a great exposure, including on his face in that tricky exposure situation. So really well done.
And the photographer is Ellen Davis. Next image, that is a better mood.
So I really love the story between these two. I mean, those expressions are just they're perfect. The guy on the right, he just looks real casual. He's got his cigarette and his joint or whatever he's smoking, and he's reaching out for that decisive moment to, like, I don't know if the move, but it looks like he's going to make a really good move, because the guy on the left he just has this look like, oh. So I just really love that interaction. That was a really great moment to capture, of that interaction, of that moment between those two. And I like how the guy on the right, how he, you know, it's like he has good contrast against the background. The guy on the left, I would actually work on that a bit more, because the tonal range, his hair kind of blends into the grass in the background. And I'd also recommend cropping a little bit of the top off the top. But this is a fun image, a great moment. Thank you very much.
And the photographer is Jonathan Beth. This next image, Elias in his nest.
Before that one, I can't help wondering if you got a model release on that. Really cute photo. Blue, and more blue throughout the image. Nice little sideways glance from Elias down there. So looking at the corner of his eye, I think that was really cute. Zooming in on this photo, particularly on Elias's face, there seem to be some kind of odd purplish color tones. And on parts of the tube as well. You can see in the interior of the tube up there. The photographer chose to frame this and or crop it. So the center of the circle is right centered in the screen there, which is a conscious choice, obviously. To me, it relegates the main subject, Elias, to a rather small lower left-hand portion of the photo in the shadow there. It works, but it's about Elias, and maybe he's kind of in second fiddle here. Yeah, in the people category, it would have been nice to see a little bit more of the subject person. That said, I'll bet it's a family favorite, and that's what counts the most.
And the maker is Ellen Prusa, and probably the proud grandmother. This next image, Stilt Parade, Amsterdam.
So this is a very strong, simple composition, and that's what I was drawn to first in this image, as well as those bold colors and that, you know, and great makeup. And I think having the face is centered, but I think that works, partly because it's part of it's that strong diagonal line going up from the bottom right to the upper left. And then actually the way her makeup and the way her eyes, or just the way that the makeup and the, is slanted, it actually, to my eye, it creates another line, kind of bisecting that, negative space. I like that there are a lot of repeating patterns, that triangle shape. It's like in her makeup and her back on the sticks and the beak. And in the background, there's only just a hint of it, but there is that same repeated shape of the triangle, and it looks like it's a building or something. Very strong, very graphic image, and I like this a lot.
And the maker is Bernadette Sylvester. This last image in people is learning bugs.
Another cute child photo. Although it's typically desirable to try to catch eyes in person photos, I kind of love the serious concentration on the little girl in the foreground space. And since she is learning bugs, that is very appropriate. The older girl in the back is also serious about her business up there. And all that makes for a really nice people picture.
And the photographer is Sheila Ryan. That ends people category. We are now into photojournalism. This first image, cowboys roping a calf and rebranding in Sierraville, California.
So this tells a very clear story, and it's actually still unfolding. That decisive moment of Alaska, of the lasso, I think that really, for me, that really helps make this story of this image. You know, it's the action and of what's about to happen next. I like that it kind of mimics the rolling hills in the background. And then there's also the loop of the rope on the opposites, you know, the diagonal, of the image. The calf is dead center on the bottom half of the image. You see the dark element, you see your eye really goes to the calf, and the cowboys, you know, he is the center of attention, and which is intended to be. And so I think that does a really good job of, emphasizing the action. I like the choice of black and white. I think that kind of gives it an old fashioned feel to an old fashioned act.
And the maker is Grace Farrer. This next image, you want to do what?
Really fun photojournalism photo, which can be tough to find. A little humor in photojournalism. It also contains some drama, however. And I think the photographer did a great job in timing the shot perfectly to capture that drama as the young climber stands right there on the precipice, about to take that critical first step there. Really nice composition, I thought. The rock angle leading down to the main subject. And that bit of red and orange that both the adult and the child have on shirt and shorts, I think really helps bring the eye to the primary subject there and makes it pop. So really nice shot.
And the photographer is Jane Barshin. This next image, lap one altogether.
So I really like the tight crop of this because it really makes the energy and the intensity of this race, more palpable. And then I also like that you can see the top of their helmets and those repeated shapes and patterns. And it also, there's some helmets that are matching, and then it kind of gives you a sense of like the relationship between some of these bikers. And I like that there's a little gap on the right-hand side, and it looks like that guy in the back is about to make his way, squeeze into the gap and try and make his way forward. Everything is on a bit of a diagonal, and so there's a lot of movement and energy. And I think this does a very good job of telling the story of the space.
And the storyteller is John Siebert. This next image, Nevada City Haunted House.
'Tis the season. Nevada City is a great fun place at Halloween. Every year I make a point of strolling around. This one is red, and more red. Actually some hot magenta mixed in there as well. To me, the right side of this photo is really where it's at. The left, I didn't think added that much. A little different on the screen for sure. But given the dark conditions that this was presumably taken in, and probably handheld, I assume, actually a very good exposure and decent clarity for the image. A cool capture of a very creative and elaborate Halloween display.
And the photographer is Brad Oliver. This ends photojournalism. We are now entering the travel category. And this first image is Serenity.
Well, it is very serene. I mean, the water is very calm, and still and peaceful, and I like, that it reflects the sky into the water. And so it has a sense of being both heaven and earth. And if you're living on a boat like that, well, perhaps that's exactly what they're doing. But it really gives, gives a good sense of the place. I like the reflection of a mast. Has such a very strong vertical line, and that pulls up, and then it goes from the foreground to the middle ground, and then it ties it into the background as well. And I think the negative space on the right-hand side, I think that was a good choice, because that balances out visually, that balances out the weight of all the sailboats on the left-hand side. Very cool colors. I think there was a little hint of alpenglow pink in there, and maybe bring that up a tiny bit, but very, very, very serene.
And the photographer is Anne Westland. This next image, Need a Ride.
Real fun and creative photo. The Sorrento art scrawled on the back wall, as well as a really nice little Italian scooter there, and elements that make it really fit that travel category well. It takes us to a different place where many of us have not been. I really like the framing, despite the S being cut off on the Sorrento. I actually wondered if that was a conscious choice. Little quirk, perhaps. And some might question the heart and the scooter being so close to dead center of the photo, but it works for me. I thought it really worked in this photograph. An enjoyable photo to spend some time with. I actually spent quite a bit of time zooming around, looking at different parts of it. It's a cool shot. Thanks for sharing this touch of Sorrento art with us.
And the photographer is Rachel Rosenthal. This next image, Irish Whirlpool.
I think this is a very pleasing image. There's a lot that I like about it. I don't get a specific sense of place for travel, so it might be better in another category. But that aside, I think there's a lot of good things about this image. I always find that long exposures of water swirling with leaves or with foam, as in this case, I think that really adds a fun visual element, and it gives a sense of time and movement. I like that there's just a hint of that waterfall in the back to give you some context of what's going on and what's causing the foam. And this is another one that I wondered what it would look like in black and white, since it is already close to being monochromatic. I think that would be a fun thing to explore.
And the photographer is Jim Sluger. This ends travel category, and we are now into creative fantasy and windows. The first image is "This Night If I Fit Is Sure Born."
I love this. To me, it's a wonderful capture of the expressions on these two dogs, especially that big guy in the middle there. I'm not exactly sure why this is in the creative category. I looked at it very carefully, trying to figure that out, and it's beyond me. It is possible the colors were intentionally muted everywhere except the dogs and really enhanced with the dogs, but I think that is allowed in other categories. So maybe photojournalism, this would fit quite well there. I'm not sure. But maybe I'm missing something in terms of what was done creatively. In any case, I really like it. And the title is perfect, given the apparent job site setting. Zooming in on the dog's face reveals quite a bit of noise and lack of clarity in that main face. But I suspect this shot was a quick grab and a fun one at that. So perhaps a little bit of vignetting would also help bring the focus onto the dogs in the center of that.
And the photographer is Anne Westland. The next image is New Birth of Venus with Red Mask.
I think this is a really successful interpretation of Botticelli's Birth of Venus. The Photoshop work is superb. So hair that, flyaway hair, and so that's something that is always really hard to work with, and even that was very nicely rendered, and it doesn't, I don't find there are any distractions in that at all. The color tone and palette works really well. The lighting is also spot on. And the curve of her leg and foot as it curves into the shell is a very nice little detail that I really appreciate. And I think it's very interesting with the addition of the mask. I mean, in the original, it's like she's covered with her hair. And here she's covered up with the mask and the fabric. And it's interesting, like, is she about to drop the fabric? Is she going to pull it closer? Is she going to hang on to the mask? Is she about to drop that? So it's kind of very intriguing. And then, of course, there's the inherent symbolism that comes along with masks and hiding the face and hiding, hiding one's nature, perhaps. And then red is, kind of symbolic of stop, of sexuality, of anger. So there's a lot of different ways that this could be interpreted. The red mask and the retelling of this story also reminds me a little bit of a film called The Fall by Tarsem Singh. Is one that I would really highly recommend sometime. Very nice job.
And the creator of this is Robert Arnold. Now we end creative fantasy and go into manipulated but realistic. First image is not manipulated, but not realistic.
Some of you may recognize this photo. It was entered last month, I believe, if I'm mistaken. And last month, I think it was entered in creative fantasy, but I could be wrong about that. It really had me scratching my head last month when I saw it, because I really liked it. I loved it, actually. And it was, I thought it was created. I wondered then if it was in the misplaced category. And given the new title, it may not fit perfectly in this category either, because if it's not manipulated and not really looking realistic, it's not quite the right category. One thing is for sure, it is both beautiful and fascinating, and if indeed not manipulated at all, it would be a clear winner in the night category. So, and nobody entered in the night category this month. Interesting. I'm sure I'm not alone in wanting to know more about how the photographer captured this enigmatic image.
And the person who can answer that question is George Pelpel.
And the answer, I don't know. It's really mysterious. And you don't know.
Find out about that more when it's done. This next image was their bathtub slide down at the house.
I like this one a lot. It's a little surreal. And I have questions, but I really like it. It's like, how did it get that? How did it get there? Can you get in and slide down it? I mean, these are the important questions. But I like that there's a very high horizon line that really puts the emphasis upon the slope of the shifting sand slope. And the jet of the house, the roof, I find that really interesting. It's like you want to go explore and see what's going in. And I just also want to know how that happened. But I really like the sense of movement it has. It looks, I mean, it almost looks like it's in motion. And I like the diagonal, and I like the color contrast of those of the warm sand and the cool sky.
And the person who can answer your questions, Ellen, is Janice Rossler. Who is not here. And that ends the manipulated category, and we are now into black and white. There are two in this category. The first one is not an ordinary stairway.
I'm a big fan of silhouette photos, especially when they're done in black and white. So this one really appeals to me. A little touch of the profile on that man's face, I think really is a nice addition. Would have been great if the woman cooperated and give us a profile of her as well. It would have been a more intriguing picture to me in some ways if it was just the people and the stairs, with all those great angular lines from in it and the shadows. the Chihuly like glass above them feels incongruous to the lower portion of the photograph, which could be fine with what the photographer was going for. But for me, it makes for a totally different photo, and I think a good one at that. If you just look at cutting the glass out and have those silhouettes with those angles. In some ways, I find the mystery and tension in the lower portion more compelling when the glass is not there. In any case, a really well done black and white photo.
And I wonder if that speaks to your love of minimalism. Maker is Jerry Thomas. The last image in the black and white category is Cloudy Afternoon in the Desert.
So black and white landscapes are classic, I always love them. So I like the lighting on this, especially this, how it puts the cactus in the front, or it just lights it up in the foreground. That could be a subject all on its own. The clouds up in the sky are very dramatic. And I like that you get the rays and the detail of the cloud and that rim lighting and a really dark sky. And there are a lot of elements about this image that I really like. And although I sometimes wonder if it might be a little too much, almost like too much of a good. I find my eye finding the attention for the front and up towards the clouds, and I find going back and forth there, and my eye doesn't rest in the middle quite as much. But this, because those mountains are fantastic, and I love how they mimic the shape of the clouds as well. It's like I wish there was like something that in the foreground that drew my eye up into the image, but there are a lot of fantastic elements, and a lot of that I like about this image.
And the photographer is Eric Ingalls. Now we move into the color category, and this first image is titled Pumpkin Patch.
Yep, it's this evening. It's a wonderful choice for this month's color category. The good perspective here, the photographer got down really low with this great perspective on some classic pumpkin colors and textures. I really like the touches of green with the orange, and would like to see a little bit more of that green pumpkin on the upper left, if that would have been possible. And maybe even pull on the rest of the pumpkin on the right, which got cut off there as well. Conscious decision perhaps on the part of the photographer, so it's just my personal preference. I would like to see a little more. Still really nice composition. And I don't know if that orange leaf that in there was placed there or not, and it probably doesn't really matter one way or the other. But to me, it really greatly enhances this lovely autumn scenery.
And the photographer is Ingrid Lockhart. This next image is Eastern Sierra oranges, yellows, and greens.
So those are really beautiful fall colors, and I think it's great to get out and be able to enjoy the fall colors. And I like how the trees on either side of the frame were used as a natural frame. Although I do think it would benefit from a bit of a crop if you cropped off some of the trees on either side. Because it feels it's such a dominant element in the image. Like you see a lot of the tree, and that fights for the focus of the autumn leaves. And so you crop a little bit off each side, that would put more of the focus onto those autumn leaves and how they kind of trail up the side of the mountain. This would be a fun spot to photograph the different perspectives and different times today.
And the photographer is Henry Goodman. This next image is titled Down the Lighted Path.
Really fun photo, fits really well in the color category, and perhaps also could have fit well in the abstract category. It's an abstract enough. In any case, I thought the photographer captured the scene very well. Particularly, I love those greens. The bright white bar on the front bottom left is a bit much, a bit distracting from the rest of the color scene. Not much probably you could do about it, toning it down, maybe just a little bit, short of cloning it. I'm not sure how much you could do. And also the white triangle shape on the lower right which looks not white up there, it looks purple up there now. Not at home, it's interesting. I didn't think that was adding a whole lot to the scene on the monitor. I thought maybe that could be removed and just have it be about that wall on the left. In any case, a very cool, colorful photo.
And the photographer is Bernadette Sylvester. This next image is painted chairs.
So I really like this image. I mean, it's very fun, it's very graphic, and this is all about those bright colors and the shapes of those chairs. I mean, the colors are pleasing because they're very rich, very saturated. And, you know, there's a little kind of, it's kind of a chaotic scene, but about a third of the way down, there's a vague sense of a horizon line, and that kind of adds a little bit of order to the chaos. And I think this, you know, I like all the repeating shapes and patterns in this. I do think, I wonder if like the lavender up in the upper left be toned down just a tiny bit, but even if it isn't, it's still just a fun, riotous, colorful image.
And the photographer is Patricia Leviton. This last image in the color category is out of service.
Indeed it is. Apparently it has been out of service for quite some time. And yet so much was left in place. That's what I found intriguing about this. There's oars, there's paddles, there's cans and bottles and all sort of miscellaneous stuff up there. It's all those little remnants, some of which are quite colorful, that add little touches of color throughout the image and make it, to my eye, more intriguing and more pleasing. I found myself zooming in and looking around at all the stuff scattered around, as well as the textures. Look, textures on that great old wooden boat. It's a tough exposure where it is in there, but I thought it was well executed without any flash or external light apparently. Perhaps a little bit brighter towards the back would be preferred, but I suspect that's exactly how the photographer intended it to be. And one last minor detail, that object in the upper right-hand corner pulls my eye away, and I really don't think it adds to the photo, which is primarily about the old boat. And if there's a way to get that out of there, I think it adds to the photo.
And the maker is Rachel Rosenthal. In that ink color, we are in our last category. And the first image in the phone category is Gary Newman in concert.
We've seen Gary before. I got to do the two Gary Newman concert shots. The other one I loved in black and white, and this one I love in color. Really nice phone photo, fun and appropriate. We're wrapping up the evening with photos by our two critiquers, interestingly. Let's see what I write here. Gary looks great in full color, particularly those red stripes on his face. Really well done phone pic under challenging lighting, with Gary framed nicely by that overhead curve from the stage feature up there. A really good concert photo, whether taken with a phone or otherwise.
And of course, that's by Alan Davis. And this last image tonight is Above the Smog.
So I've always liked images like this, because, you know, it's not a complex image, but it is very pleasing. I like the chromatic, monochromatic color scheme, especially like in that blue. It's very calming, it's very soothing. And I like the contrast between the soft clouds and the darker, hard shapes of the mountains. And I like that those shapes were keep kind of all over the back. And it actually, to me, it feels like an Asian ink wash painting. And you know, I think those are really soft and beautiful and lovely. You know, debating about maybe cropping a little bit off the bottom, but I think either way, I think it's just a lovely image.
And as Tom said, it is by Tom Quinn. So that was our last image. Please thank our critiquers.
Thank you, all of this kids and doing this week for us. I offer training and just come and talk to me and we will sign you up for next year. Rachel? To you.
Thank you, Ellen, this is Tom. Next meeting is November 28th, so in the meantime, happy Halloween and hope you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. And remember to vote for these images until November 18th. All right, good night, everybody.
Ta-da. Yeah, man.
Thank you, Tom.